This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming at you Thursday afternoon. It's September 12th. I guess it's still Thursday morning. And because we're still a little over 2 weeks away from training camp beginning, I thought it would be a good idea to start thinking about what questions we are going to be asking Finch and the Wolves players when media day and training camp rolls around here in a couple weeks. You know, what questions did we have at the end of last season? What topics are we going to be discussing here on the show in October? What are the topics the beat writers going to be writing their stories about in training camp? So I thought it would make sense to kind of start putting those all together now here in September. So I got one of the beat writers on here, Chris Hine from the Star Tribune. Chris, I tasked you with this homework assignment.
Yes.
We'll get into that for the meat of this episode. But first, I think it'd be cool if you shared with the listeners what you've sort of been working on this summer as it is Wolves related. I think we mentioned this, at the end of last season, but as a little bit of a refresher and just update on how things are coming along.
Yeah. So I've been working on a book about Anthony Edwards for the last few months here. Thank you. So it's been going well. I'm a couple weeks/months out from when it has to be due. And, our aim is to have this out by the spring so that, come playoff time, everybody will be able to have this in their hands and reading it. That's the goal right now. I have to hit the deadline. Hopefully I can get there, but I feel pretty good about it, about where we're at. I spent a month plus in Atlanta. I got a place down there and I just kind of hung out there, tried to meet as many people as I could that were influential in his life. That both when he was a kid, when he was a teenager, still now to this day. I was driving around to meet some people that lived a couple hours away. And it was a really good experience. I really feel like meeting people in person instead of, doing a bunch of phone calls is really going to help bring out some of their stories and their memories. And, I hope people appreciate it. I'm excited to get it done. I still have a lot of work to do. And, I'll kind of be doing that as the early season is going on. Never done this before. Right. We'll see how I handle it, but I'm really excited for people to read some of the stuff that I've been getting. Yeah.
And obviously we'll have Chris on, weekly, like last season, again, this season, or as much as we can get them. So we'll keep everybody updated on the process of the book, when they can pre-order it, buy it, all those sort of things.
Yes.
But I can just say from, you've been sending, Kyle and I little excerpts here and there, and, they're fun and cool, but it's what's awesome. And what is going to be awesome about this book is it's so many of the stories that were going on around the time when we were telling other stories, if that makes sense, where we're getting to know, it's the behind the scenes stuff. It's what was going on in the draft process. What was, we're even in the media, right? We only have, we see like the top 10% of the water, right? Like,
correct.
You are now diving deeper into his history, what's gone on in his process in the NBA. And it's really cool that, people are willing to share that. They're much more willing to share that stuff, after time has passed. And it's just been even just a few little things that you've sent me this is what makes books great and different than like day-to-day beat writer articles. I know everybody's going to love it. And it's been cool, man. It's been cool.
Yeah. And it's been a really fun process for me getting to know, some of this stuff really more in depth, and people are, I think, whether it's because of the book, because it is a book and it's going to be, kind of the first draft of history in his career, that people are sharing some things that I haven't heard before. And so I hope that it's new and refreshing and great for people who are Wolves fans, especially to read some of this, down the line. Everybody just be patient. We got a long way to go here. Right. We got several months before this whole process is done, and I've never done this before. Like I said, I don't know what the editing process is like, but I feel pretty good with where it's at. And yeah, I've got a, you know, I told somebody the other day, it feels like you're climbing a mountain. It feels like you're climbing a mountain with every little bit that you write, but then every bit that you write, it feels like the mountain is getting taller.
Right.
So, you know, I don't think I'll ever feel like this book is going to be done,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to where I'll feel completely happy with it. But I think at some point I just kind of have to say, okay, this is what I got. I have to write it, and we're moving on. We're moving on. You know?
But that's part of writing a story about someone's story that isn't yet finished. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
this is 4 years into Anthony Edwards' career, 23 years into his life. There's a lot, you know, he's still writing his own story. So,
correct. Yeah.
you know, I would imagine that's a challenging thing to do with the book, but I don't know. I'm excited about it, man. And I know it'll be a good reward for both you and, readers and listeners at the end of the season, or, come playoff time, of like something to, kind of look forward to for, once I think people are excited for the season, or are going to get excited here. And that's going to kind of carry, people's Wolves fandom for the next 6 months. But then there's the playoffs, wherever that goes. And
Correct.
this too. So
I think, you know, if we're tying kind of maybe some of what I've learned this summer into what might happen this season, and kind of segueing into what we're going to talk about today, I think something that has emerged kind of as I've been talking to people from various points in his life is a lot of times coaches or people around him, whether it was Tom Crean at Georgia, whether it was like a Pat Bev, the year he was here, or Ricky Rubio. The way that people have motivated Ant in the past is by telling him that, Dwayne Wade used to do this, or Dwayne Wade didn't do this, or James Harden used to do this, or Kawhi did this, or, so I'm very curious now that he has had this Olympic experience, that no longer has he just heard about like what the greats of the game do in terms of their routines, their work ethic, how they take care of their body, how their professionalism, things like that. I'm very curious as to how, now that he's actually seen it up close with Team USA, how that is going to affect just how he prepares, how he works, what his mentality is moving forward. Because no longer are people just telling him like, hey, this is what LeBron did, or this is what Steph does. Now it's, okay, I've seen how LeBron works. I've seen how Steph works. I've seen how KD works up close, and what kind of a lasting effect that's going to have on him overall from all sorts of different angles.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because that is the thing that I don't know, like uniquely to him has always been brought up. If it's like, look at these other guys did this. I don't know. It was Pat Bev with Harden, or even Finch, with Harden there, Rubio and the guys he's played with. He's in so many ways always like been treated like the little brother, this like naive, I don't know, like seemingly treated so naive, and like people had to kind of coach him along. Well, now, this summer he was in the water himself. I keep using water as an analogy. But yeah, I am interested. And I think that is a good question as we come into training camp. I think it's something a lot of people are going to be thinking about is, what tangible impact did that have on how he's going to play basketball in the NBA this season, and elevate the Timberwolves this season to, the lofty goals that they do have. So that's a good place to start. Let me before we jump into more of our questions, I'll let people know that today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. And if you're heading out to a brewery this weekend, as always, if you're heading out for a beer or a THC beverage, check out Falling Knife Brewing Company, Northeast Minneapolis. The Lynx play the Sky on Friday night at 6:30. So if you want to watch it but aren't going to Target Center, Falling Knife is a great option. Much like the Wolves games during the season, they're showing those there. Chris, they also have 2010s trivia on Sunday night. Very in your strike
okay,
zone.
all right, okay.
5
Are we
p.m.
going? Are we going? Let's go.
I don't know, man. It's a football Sunday.
Oh,
We'll
that's
see.
true.
We'll
Yeah.
see how my fantasy matchup is. I'm 0-1, so I gotta get things right. But 2010s trivia on Sunday night at Falling Knife. That starts at 5 p.m. Yeah, should be one of the final warm summery weekends. Great time to hang out at the patio at Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. Okay, so I guess that was that. Well, we started with yours. I'll give you my first, question I want answered in training camp, and I think an obvious, broader question is, how is this offense going to improve this season? Right, number 1 defense last season, number 17 offense. They made moves that maybe sacrificed a little bit of defense, added a little bit of offense, but I think kind of like drilling down. I try to think about like drilling down more into that of like to Finch or to the players of how are you going to do that? How are you going to play that gets more offense rather than just being like, well, we switched out Rob Dillingham for Kyle Anderson. Right? Like what are the things that they can actually do on the floor? And my question was, how much is just quote unquote more Cat the answer for better offense for this team, right? And we've done this forever, and I'm not doing the more 3-point shooting thing because that just, I mean, it is kind of funny, but like the more threes thing, there's no real sign that is going to happen, at least in like a major way. Finch has been saying they want him to shoot more threes. Carl's been saying he wants to shoot threes. It's not happening. I'm not saying it can't go up more, but I think when we're talking about like a real impact, it would need to be like 2 or 3 or 4 more threes per game. That seems unlikely to me to happen. So I'm like, okay, well, there's plenty of other things Cat's good at on offense, right? How do you get more offense, even if the threes kind of stay where they are? And I started rewatching the playoffs because I figured out, I'll do some stuff on that during sometime this fall. And I only watched the first game, the Phoenix game 1 against Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I was reminded Cat was pretty dominant in the post, just post ups, all playoffs. And that has been this area for him that he used to be so effective. The Tibbs years, he was dominant in the post. He was one of the few players in the league who averaged more than a point per possession in post-up situations. And then kind of as Tibbs was let go and Ryan had his stint, it's just precipitously sort of dropped the volume with which Cat gets post-ups, and his effectiveness in post-up situations has really decreased. Over kind of the Finch era, but it spiked back up a little bit last season. Last season was his first year since Tibbs was the coach that he was over a point per possession in post-up situations. Still lower volume than back in the day, but it was like, okay, this is working. And then in the playoffs, it was well over a point per possession. Obviously, that's a smaller sample size, but we remember that. Like, all right, KD's on him or Royce O'Neal is on him, and Cat was more effective than he has been in the past, in these past few seasons, in the post, in the playoffs. And I wonder if that like turns a light bulb on, not just in Cat, but in Finch and the team as a whole of like, hey, this might be one of the best things we do offensively. So let's increase that volume up, because Cat's, again, his effectiveness went back up to where it used to be, but it was only like 2.7 post-ups per game last season. When back in the day with Tibbs, it was like 6 post-up possessions. So I wonder, I just wonder if more Cat is the answer for more offense with this team. But specifically, is using him in the post more, one way that they'd be able to do that, because he's their best offensive player outside of Anthony Edwards. How do you sort of think about Cat?
I would wonder those possessions. where he's posting up. Did they come with Rudy on the floor or Rudy off the floor? Would be my follow up to that. You know?
Totally fair question. That's and that's part of the reason why the numbers went down, right? Like it was his lowest post up volume that first Rudy season. Like it was only like 2.2 a game that he had. But remember, the post up stuff started getting. It fell off before Rudy got here.
It did. Remember? No, it did. Well, because you know it was they're prioritizing you know threes and you know analytically sound shots and
he was struggling with the doubles. They were guarding him with small guys, and he didn't. It was like whoa,
right? And people and you know as Jace always likes to say, if you ever scouted the Wolves, you know, and you put your 4 on Cat instead of the 5, you know, you'll give him trouble in those areas. You know. I think Cat is the answer to a more efficient offense. I just, you know, without saying more threes, I don't know what it looks like.
Right. That's why I was like,
aside from the cliche, hey, Cat, just take a couple more threes a game. I think, you know, maybe posting up is, you know, we talk about a lot of times like, you know, like the Mike Rudy pick and roll is always like a crutch of the offense, right? When nothing else is working, Mike and Rudy pick and roll can get something rolling.
Yeah.
Maybe the Cat post up is another, you know, if Rudy's not on the floor.
No, you're totally right. Like
maybe that's another crutch they can lean on. Yeah.
A crutch. I'm not saying like, let's go like back in the day, Al Jefferson, like every time down, like just get him on the block and go to work. But something that they can go to and something that you can punish if they're like, all right, we are going to guard Cat with Royce O'Neal.
Right.
Like if they're trying to get away with something there, like don't let them get away with it. Force them to guard you more genuinely. Put a bigger player on Cat because he's cooking Royce O'Neal or Grayson Allen in the post. And now this bigger player is out guarding Cat on the perimeter, right? There's levels to this, right? Okay, now the bigger guys out there pump and go. You burn by Drew Eubanks, right? Or Nurkic. I just have the Phoenix series in my head.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's I really do believe that if Cat got back to being a higher volume, effective post player, that there would be like exponential growth to the offense as a whole. Now, some people are probably out there thinking like, man, Dane, those are like the situations where we see, you know, Cat flailing a lot. It's where you see a lot of turnovers.
Where you see a lot of offensive fouls. Yeah.
Totally fair. But this is the time to implement new things that could change, things. And you can make if you're going to make big changes, you do them at the beginning of the season and you establish it as something. I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but it's one I thought of if we agree, which I think we all do, that more Cat equals better offense, and also have come to grips with the idea that he's probably just not going to be a 8-9 threes a game type player. I think that's one one of the ways that it makes some sense to me.
It makes sense because it's also, you know, for 2 years, the Wolves, and they did a better job of this last year. We've heard Finch say, you know, we're not going to adapt when teams go small against us. We're going to try to punish them for going small against us. And that is one tool that they can use. Like you said, they did it effectively in that Phoenix series. Right. Can you do it on a night in, night out basis? You know, when, you know, the matchups maybe aren't as drilled down as they are in a playoff series. So I do think the answer is more Cat. You know, this kind of ties into one of my questions that I had as well, which is, what is an acceptable trade-off this year, offense for defense, in their mind? Yeah. You know, like in terms of where the efficiencies were. Like, you know, last year they were 1 on defense, 17 on offense. Like, where do you want? How far are you willing to let the defense fall because you have a Rob Dillingham playing a lot? You have Joe Ingles. You know, you sacrificing? How much are you willing to sacrifice? Like, do you want it? Or would you be happy if like the offense went up to like 12 and the defense slipped to 4 or 5? You know, like what's the balance in terms of where you want the numbers to end up by the end of the year? Would be one of my questions.
Yeah, like I agree that is going to happen, right?
Right.
To some extent. does it need to be like that drastic?
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But when you have a rookie who's small as your backup point guard, I think you're in line for a bit of a regression defensively when he's playing those minutes.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. I just wonder if personally I've turned that dial up too much in my head to be like, oh, there's no way they could be top 5 because Rob Dillingham's in the mix. Like, is that fair for a player who's going to play 18 minutes? Like,
I don't think so. I think it's still possible.
Yeah.
And we'll see how they end up kind of configuring the rotations and the minutes if they're trying to hide him or how they can hide him. I imagine he's going to be playing alongside Ant for a lot of his minutes, I would think, or at least a significant portion of them. But
and hopefully Jaden and Rudy, right? Like,
exactly.
Defenders on the team.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I go to in my head too, is like, wait, what made the defense awesome last season? Well, you had 2 of the best defenders in the league in Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. They're still here, right?
Anthony Edwards is still playing 37, 38 minutes a night.
I wouldn't expect him to be less committed to defense this season.
Right.
Because I don't even think it was like an all the time thing he did last year during the regular season, at least. I mean, Cat was more committed to defense last season. It's hard for me to be like, I mean, maybe, I don't know if we get 20 games into the season. I can't think we're going to be like, man, Cat is playing way worse defense than last year. So if we're just kind of going through the rotation, I guess the real question is like, all right, Kyle Anderson was a really helpful defender. And so there's some drop off there. Like we can all agree with that. We can also say that he definitely hurt the offense. To your question, I guess I don't know how much a bench player should taking one bench player out.
The defensive rating,
right. But I still kind of do think it will.
Sure, no, 100%.
That's why it's a good question.
But I think that's the if the front office is signaling something, that's what they're signaling. I think they looked at that Dallas series and just said, we got to get more scoring out on the floor.
Right.
And even if it comes at the cost of our defense a little bit, because we can't play like this deep in the playoffs and expect to win when our offensive options seem to be limited.
It's hyper logical, right? It's like, and it's the same thing they did with when they traded for Rudy Gobert in the first place. We got cooked in the first round of the playoffs because we couldn't rebound and couldn't defend the rim. Well, we'll go get, exactly those 2 things. I think it's kind of the same, just, I guess, square peg, square hole, right? Like just kind of to do it that sort of way. I'm very curious to see what that looks like. But to your point, we're not even there yet. We're not even talking about what it looks like yet. We're trying to get in their head of what is the acceptable drop off that they're looking for there. I think that's a good question. You got anything else on that? Or you want me to do another one?
Also kind of related to that, with whether it be Dillingham's minutes or not, is what's the plan for Mike Conley this year?
Yeah, let's tag team that because I got some stuff on that too.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just curious. Like, Mike wanted to play all 82 games last year. I know that. Obviously he was limited to about 30 minutes a night, give or take. Is that still the same plan? Do they want to lessen his workload a little bit? Get it down to more mid-20s perhaps, or will he be playing back-to-backs? Like, are we entering a new stage of Mike Conley's career with this stuff, or is he going to try to basically just roll over what happened last year?
I looked at it, just point guard minutes distribution last season, and this is imperfect because like Cleaning the Glass or any of those sites don't necessarily know who the point guard was. But we know when Mike Conley was out there that he was point guard, right? So he played in 76 games, 2,193 minutes. He played 57% of the point guard possessions. according to Clinton Glass. I think we could take that as truth, because when Mike Conley was out there, he was a point guard, right?
Right.
You go down from there, and the next most was Anthony Edwards, 21% of the possessions. Jordan McLaughlin, 9% of the possessions. Monte Morris, 7%. Shake Milton, 3%. Now, the Ant one, you notice there's no Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Right, I was going to say,
or
where's
Kyle
Nickeil?
Anderson in there.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think the
Right.
Ant minutes were
Might have been
I looked at it, and it was that's
the
where
fungible ones. Yeah.
they like show you the 5-man lineup combination, and I would look at that. I would go, that's Anthony Edwards was not the point guard here. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was, or Kyle Anderson often was.
Yeah.
In those situations. But I agree. And like, how is that going to work? Is it more Ant? Like, is Ant just actually the point guard, no Nickeil, no Kyle out there? Like, he's surrounded by guys who are clearly like shooters, not handlers, whatever. Is that part of the plan here at point guard going forward? I don't know. That's the question, and
that's why we're going to ask it at media day. Yeah,
exactly.
That's the whole point, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Let's grab our first break here. Sorry, gotta get my. I'm not in mid-season form.
Second break. We already.
Well, that was our little
knife.
That's true. Well, I don't have my video up here for Your Home Improvement Company, but today's show is also brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. I know there's some people out there who you're thinking about getting some household stuff done here before winter comes. It can be any sort of home improvement type of project, but Your Home Improvement Company is offering a deal in September of buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free. If you're going to get that done at some point in 2024, I would recommend, getting it done here in the fall. If it's your windows, get those taken care of. Your Home Improvement Company also specializes in transforming outdated bathrooms. They're offering a 30% off deal on bathroom remodels this month as well. Their bathroom renovations are done by certified local professionals, and they come with a lifetime warranty. And whatever the project is with Your Home Improvement Company, they offer great financing deals that require 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2026. Contact Your Home Improvement Company by calling 866-777-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Chris, to keep going on the point guard thing, I sent this to you when we were texting or in the email or whatever. I'm curious about, related to the point guard position, specifically about Nickeil as an answer at point guard. We talked about before in those minute distributions that his name didn't even come up there. He wasn't really treated as a point guard, but we saw Nickeil play point guard sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he's right up there at the top. And, I thought of him as like a game manager quarterback, right? You wanted him to come off a pick and roll. The defense has shifted, pass the ball to Rudy on the roll, or somebody spotted up in the corner, whatever. Nickeil's good at that part of being a point guard. He's not a strong, like, create for himself type of guy, right? And he's never shot very well at the rim. His numbers there, when I was looking him up, weren't very good. Not a big like floater guy or anything. I remember last year he would just kind of like step into like 15-foot mid-range, like, be a guy at a drop, and he'd just kind of step in and be like, all right, I will take this, because it didn't require anything at the rim or anything crazy like that. I've always felt like he has a little bit more juice as a primary sort of creator. The numbers, don't back that up. Also, he's been really valuable as a spot up guy, and maybe you just want him in the corner shooting 45% of the time. But given the sort of need at point guard that this team has, I do wonder how much of the solution at point guard, given that they no longer have Monte Morris or Jordan McLaughlin or Kyle Anderson, how much of the solution is Nickeil. How do you think about him factoring into the point guard thing?
I think Nickeil is the answer if Finch, let's say 15, 20 games into the season, if Dillingham is struggling and Finch is worried about them winning games, right? like Nikhil is probably the button he pushes to, be the
what are the alternatives?
Right, exactly. Like at the expense of Dillingham. That's kind of where I see him fitting in. I mean, in an ideal world, Mike Conley plays 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Dillingham plays the other 18-ish. Right. And that's your point guard situation, right? But I don't know that it's going to shake out like that. And I think that if they're struggling, if Dillingham is struggling and the team is off to a 500 start, whatever.
Sure.
I think that's the button that gets pushed at that point. And, I worry about with Nikhil, I think he's been so good since he's been here, because I think he has played within himself. He's played within the role that they have defined for him. And I worry that if they add more to his plate, that it might be too much and it might affect his confidence. That would be what I would worry about.
I agree. I mean, he was great at what his role was, and he did that specifically. I do think, just thinking out loud here. So Mike missed 6 games last 76, played 76 games. I remember, and maybe it was the first game he missed was that game we were both at in Boston. Correct. Where they had the weird flight thing, and Nikhil started. He played really well. And there was a couple of times where it was like, all right, Mike's out. And I feel like when Mike was out, it was always like random. It's like, random night of rest. We're like, oh, okay, all right, here. Nikhil's getting the nod, or Monte's getting the nod, and we're like, oh, it's just be interesting to see what it looks like with a different person at point guard. I'm totally with you that there is a risk of, like, by increasing what you ask Nikhil to do, that you get like overall diminishing returns. I do wonder, like, if we go bigger picture, like years down the road, to justify bringing Nikhil back on what will likely be a really big contract, relative to the $4 million that he makes now, does he need to be more than that role? Does he need to be a point guard? Maybe does he need to? Do you need to have some confidence or be open to the possibility that he is part of the answer at point guard once Mike Conley is gone? Right. Obviously, Dillingham is the assumed heir apparent, but if in a year or two Mike Conley's gone and you have shelled out for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think your hope or expectation would be that he could help Rob Dillingham fill in those shoes. I think this year and how they use Nickeil will be telling in kind of how they think about him in the future. Does he just have the same role again, or for was he 25? Like, are you trying to still expand his game and see if there's a little bit more ceiling to who he is? I think on this team, that's probably found by him handling the ball a little bit more, just because they lack some options there.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And listen, the more, if he's able to succeed in that role, then all the better. Obviously, and it increases his value. Probably, if he succeeds, that probably increases the likelihood that he doesn't come back after this year, because he might be a little too expensive to keep around at that point. I already think he might be too expensive, after this year, to keep around anyway. But it could only help. But I think there is a fine line, and Finch obviously coached him in New Orleans as well.
Sure.
I just think that there's a fine line you have to walk with him so that you don't, affect his confidence negatively.
I think that's
like he's in such a good groove here in Minnesota, defined role for the most part. And just knowing him, I think you could tell, like, when he started for Mike, in those times that he's playing major point guard minutes, he puts a lot of pressure on himself.
Sure.
And when he always does anyway, like, even if he is just spotting up in the corner to shoot threes. But I think you just have him in such a good groove, such a good fit for this team. I wouldn't personally want to mess with it too much.
Totally fair. You got another question for
let's see what we got here. We kind of had a lot of overlap. I have okay. Here's this one. If Jaden is going to take a leap this year offensively, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know what it looks like, especially in the context of the starting lineup. Are you calling more stuff for him? We know they like to play out of the flow, and we often hear that Jaden, is the barometer for the flow and how well it's going.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get a lot of play calls for him. He doesn't have the ball in his hands a lot. So if one of your linchpins for this season and ways that you're going to improve and get to that next level is that Jaden McDaniels becomes more of a complete all-around player, how do you accomplish that within the structure of what you have, especially in the starting lineup?
I think it's a great one. It's one I had down too, because I said it's the every year question of
Correct.
Is there more offensive pie for McDaniels? I looked up his usage rate because I remember we asked this last year at media day and in training camp, and the answer was like a resounding no. Like, because you got to remember before last season, Jaden's usage did go up because Cat was out, right? Cat missed 60 games or 55 games or whatever that season. And Jaden's usage rate for the 22-23 season was 14.7% of possessions, up from 11. So they were kind of like, I don't think we're going to even be able to get him back to what that was. They did. They found a way to get it to exact 14.6%. So it plateaued. His usage from 22-23 to 23-24 plateaued, which I think was an accomplishment, because you do have Karl Anthony Towns, who's taking on a lot more usage there. Anthony Edwards continues the amount of times or the amount of possessions that he's using is growing as well. So this wasn't what you were asking, but can Jaden do more? Probably not. There's just not that much pie there.
Right.
But what are the things that he's doing within that 15% of the pie that he gets when he's on the floor that could be more effective and more efficient? And I think I don't know, there's probably one I haven't really thought about that much. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about in once training camp and stuff is actually going on, but it is probably the cutting. It is probably the offensive rebounding. And it probably, to me, it would come at the expense of some 3-point shooting, right? Just volume there. Because I think Jaden can be, if he's a 35% 3-point shooter, like I'll trade, if we could directly trade some of those threes for cuts, I think that's about the same value, right? There, you want Jaden to be able to shoot threes and be respected at the 3-point line. So the spacing is sound, but I think it's more about what can Jaden do better within his piece of pie? How can they get him going in those post-up situations? I was looking at some of it. And I'm like, man, with Cat in post-ups, Jaden, I just see that, like Jaden coming off that as a cutter when they bring the double. Cat had so few assists out of that, and they were almost always to Rudy, who was just like being ignored, right? In the middle of the floor. I think Jaden can be a spot for that too. Ant and Cat looking for him more so in that middle of the floor area. So big, right? Finishing around the rim, he's really good at. I think there's more things that he can do there. I'm not sure if there's a lot more total possessions for him to take in there.
I think you're right. And that was how he succeeded in the playoffs. I think especially in that first round series, you mentioned the rebounding. That was a big part of his game in the postseason. So I think that's one thing. But I just don't know how you say as a team that having internal improvement is the way to get to a championship, but without providing the opportunities and space for that improvement to take place.
Who are the candidates for internal improvement on the team?
It's Jaden McDaniels,
Nas, maybe
maybe Nas, right? Exactly. It's those guys. We know Nas when he's on the floor, gets a. I don't know what his usage rate was last year off the top of my head, but we know he gets a healthy dose of it. But Jaden has to find it in the the crevices and cracks of the offense, and that's,
and they have to help him find that,
and they have
too.
to help him find it.
Yeah.
And they have to, maybe they do have to start calling more stuff for him. I don't know what the answer is, but if this is how you get over the hump and how, you beat a Dallas team that is limiting you offensively, then yeah, you got to try to provide more room for him to succeed and give him more of a runway to succeed and maybe fail offensively in the season.
I think the answer is actually what you said the first 15 seconds was, if they play in the flow more and they play more effectively in the flow, Jaden's just going to get more possessions, more easy buckets. That's how it comes. Sure. Can this team get better at that Finchian flow, right? If they do, the offense will get better and Jaden will directly benefit from it, because he always does.
I just don't know. I mean, in the Rudy Gobert era here, I feel like we've never seen the offense click the way it did 2 seasons ago. Yeah. When it was a non-Rudy version of the offense. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that they've ever really mastered it with Rudy out there on the floor. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that they can play it consistently enough to have that happen. Right. That's a big question mark for me, because their offense has been middling these last 2 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. The one time it was that second half of the
22 season,
21-22 season, the D'Lo was shooting crazy. I mean, they didn't have Rudy. It was a different style of team, but the offense was great. And at the second half of the season, and that's what led them into the Memphis series. And it was, Finch was openly pleased about the offensive flow that they did not have a 7'2" center in the dunker spot there. Right. That's what they need to find this season. That's probably the big thing for the offense. Related to the Jaden, can he do more piece that I had down is, as a question, is, do they want Ant to do more? And I think a lot of people, kind of to the Olympics thing that you were talking about at the beginning, it's like, all right, the ascension continues, right? Because it's, because Anthony Edwards is getting better. He absolutely is getting better. He is ascending. But I wonder if the ascension includes more, right?
I don't think it does. I don't know. He
was 7th in the league in usage rate last season. These are the only players who, and usage rate, again, sorry, we've been referencing this. This is how much a player uses a percentage of the possessions, shots, assists, or turnovers, right? So it's the possessions that end with that player. Ant's usage rate was 33% last year. These are the only 6 players that were higher. Luka was 40.3. We know what that looks like.
Right.
That's why it's a lot more than Ant's. Embiid was 38.9. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was 34.8. Trae Young was 34.6. Jalen Brunson was 33.7. And Cade Cunningham was 33.1. I mean, those are the offenses, and Detroit just kind of by default, that are the heliocentric, right? Every single possession goes through this guy.
We know how averse Finch is to that. He has said it many times, and that's the word he uses, is heliocentric. And we know that he does not prefer to play that way. And
they already kind of are from a percentage standpoint, It's hard for me to be we actually want to give the ball,
dial it up even more. Right? If anything, take something off of his plate. I mean, you don't want to take anything off of his plate. He's the best player on the team, but it's
it's just not buying into what I think probably so many people who maybe didn't watch the Wolves a ton last season are it's going to be a lot more Ant this year because he's getting. And it's more so just a reminder to people that it was a lot of Ant last year too. Mm-hmm. And it's just like Jaden. It's all right, let's keep the pie the same size. Let's get better stuff within within that pie. I think that's probably the answer.
I mean, one of the ways in which his, just looking at the raw numbers, I mean, his field goal attempts were basically the same from the first Rudy year to this one. The free throws went up by 1.1 a game, so that was where he was.
That is included in usage too.
It's included in usage as well. Yeah. So, and turnovers were about the same. Mm-hmm. So it is if he stays the same, it's like, can you lift up like the free throws again? Can you keep inching that up? Maybe, I don't know, one less field goal attempt a game. I don't know where it goes.
Yeah, probably hope for
like
to lower turnovers a little bit more.
Lower turnovers a little bit more.
Assist play make a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
And cut out a bad shot or two a game. Like I think, and these are nitpicks. Absolutely. Like the numbers within his usage are good, fine. It's just like, I don't know. I just, it would be hard for me to see, knowing who the coach is, like you said, to picture the Wolves offense looking like the Thunder's offense looks like with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or the Mavs offense looks like with Luka. I can't see Finch turning that dial up that much. And we've asked about that for years. I've asked him, particularly in the Harden vein, because he coached him in Houston, of just like, hey, how much do you want Ant to be that? And he goes, I don't think those are the best thing Ant does. I remember early on in Finch's time, he's like, the best time when Ant is a weapon is when he's like that secondary guy who gets it. He's against a tilted defense and he just attacks to the basket. I mean, we can all picture that.
Correct.
Those are just the times where it's like, good luck. I mean, that's the dunk on college.
The flip side to that is, I do think, Ant, when he has the ball in his hands, is a much more engaged Ant than an Ant that is playing off the ball.
Fact.
So that sounds nice, right?
Yeah.
But in practice, Ant just naturally is just more into the game when he's the one who's got the ball in his hands making the decisions, and he's not the one who's waiting for the defense to tilt and then getting the ball. Maybe that'll be an area of growth for him this year. But just in general, again, this is also a little bit of the book reporting shining through. That's just who he's always been. You engage him with the ball on offense, and you engage him by putting him on the best player on the defensive end of the floor. When he's not engaged, it's a different Ant.
Yeah. And hopefully as he matures and gets older, there's less of a swing there, right? But absolutely, it's as much as I love watching Anthony Edwards, play basketball. It's one of the frustrating things is seeing that swing and attentiveness from him. Did you have anything else on your list? I have one more.
We kind of hit in different ways a lot of the different stuff I had. I had a thing about overall 3-point volume, which I feel like we talk about every year. The trade-off, Jaden, plan for Mike. We hit pretty much. I'll say this. My last point with Finch, and we also touched on this a little bit in the Dillingham kind of conversation, is what is Finch's trade-off playing the young guys, whether it be Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., whether it be putting Leonard Miller or Josh Minot in the rotation. What is his trade-off in terms of letting these guys have some leeway to make mistakes and potentially put regular season games in more jeopardy than they might otherwise be, at the expense of longer-term development, whether it's later in this season or for seasons in the future? Because I think the cautionary tale is the Denver Nuggets, and I think that's what you have to look at and say, well, Denver, kind of went for it last year. They get the 2 seed, but did it come at the expense of not really developing their depth? And is that a cautionary tale for Chris Finch, or does he have the more what's the word, Tom Thibodeauian mindset of all I care about is what's in front of me tonight? So
no, it's this is weird how we didn't share our things together, but my last one was what does the bench rotation look like specifically? Dillingham and Shannon. That's what I put down versus Ingles. That's what you're asking, right? Yes, right there too is like, and one representative example of that would be Ingles versus Shannon, right? I think off the bench, we know it's going to be Nas, Nikhil, in Rob, 6, 7, 8,
Mm-hmm.
and then 9 is Ingles or Shannon, right? Or if you do want to throw Minot or Miller in there, it's kind of the like Kyle Anderson was Finch's go-to there, kind of his like things.
Correct.
The one that he trusted so much more than any of those guys. And I personally think that was the right answer. I don't think they had young players last season that were ready to step up into that role. And so I never really, Kyle was always big on that about, wanting to give some of the younger guys a chance. And I get that. And I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And the Nuggets example is a cautionary tale. It's, the young players got to be good enough to be able to do it. And now I think you probably have more NBA ready young players than you did, last season or the season before that. Cause I don't think Wendell Moore Jr. or Josh Minot or Leonard Miller were ready to be NBA rotation players on a really good team in the Western Conference last season. I think if we're talking to Finch about this right now, or what I would imagine he'll say in training camp is, well, we got to see if they're, are they ready to be able to play NBA caliber or, close to it. If they're really far away from that, then I don't think you can just be like, oh, long-term development. Minot, Miller, Dillingham, Shannon, they all got to be close to functional, right?
Yeah.
To be able to give them that spot, because you are competing, right? Like this is, it's a weird spot. It's the Nugget spot. And I don't know exactly what the answer is. Maybe if we covered the Nuggets, we'd be like, well, I wish they would have done that. I wish they would have played Peyton Watson or Strother or whatever, those guys more last season. It'll be interesting to see, though. It is the 8th and 9th spots. I guess the same thing.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, but I get it. But but honestly, I mean, one of the keys to the Wolves' success, especially in that Denver series, was their depth. Was the fact that they could go eight deep and have lineups at various points in the game that could take advantage of the fact that the team across from them was not as deep. So
that's a great. I was watching that game 1 yesterday of the Phoenix thing, and Nikhil and Nas came in when Phoenix had got to its like, oh God, Phoenix starts playing the guys that they're like, oh my God, I wish we didn't have to play them. And
then the Bulls are coming back with legitimate options.
Yes. No, we actually can't wait to get Nas in right now, because we know he's going to that first minute, he's going to provide energy. Nikhil's going to guard there. And this Wolves team is going to have that again. Obviously, you have Nikhil and Nas on.
Right. So you still have the top 7, but yeah, having the 8th and 9th guy be strong enough to play in a playoff series and also just provides you more flexibility. I mean, if they didn't have Nikhil, are they able in that Phoenix series to sit Carl at various times and say, no, we're going to go with the defensive lineup of death here and go with Nikhil, Jaden, and Ant to guard
first and second
Beal and Kevin Durant. Yeah, exactly. So, it provides you lineup flexibility and optionality at crucial times. Lets you play that mix and match game more in a postseason series. So, but at the same time, the Western Conference is deep. You got to win games. We know that they would like to at least be a top 4 team. So that first round series, at the very least, is a home court series. We don't know how that's all going to shake out this year in terms of the standings, but I do think that there will have to be some give and take. Some nights where, Rob Dillingham is going to look like a rookie. Especially him, and maybe Terrence Shannon Jr. is maybe the more ready prospect, just given his age. But there will be growing pains. There always are for rookies in the league, even especially top 10 picks who are 19 years old. So, how much leeway are you willing to live with and give them?
That's the question, man. These are all the questions. This was fun. I feel like even just like the process of kind of looking into this. The past couple of days has been kind of a little bit more re-engaged on this team and getting ready for training camp. And and what's to come. I know you've been working a lot more than I have the last 6 weeks or so, but I really
normally I'm on I might be on a beach. Last year at this time I was in Europe. It's been a different summer for me for sure.
Well, you're gonna sell that book. You could be on a beach all summer next year.
We'll
skip
see.
summer league. You'll be chilling. I think it's an awesome project that you are going to be really pleased that you did, even though I'm sure it's going to drive you crazy over these next couple months while it's while you're wrapping it up in the middle of the season. I don't know. You'll survive. We got you back. He's Chris Hine. He'll be back with us throughout this season weekly. Again, I'm excited to have him. Obviously, you can follow him on Twitter at Christopher Hine, and get your Star Tribune subscriptions ready for the for the season to come, because Chris and Jerry and everyone over at the Strip, I'm sure, will be covering the Wolves intently this season, probably more than a long time. There's gonna be a lot of.
I hope so. It's an exciting time. Last year was a great year. Not only for the Wolves, but I feel like for our coverage. And so I hope people follow along and subscribe, support local journalism. We need it at this time in 2024. So, please do if you can.
He's Chris. Again, follow him on Twitter at Christopher Hine. I'll be back next week. I haven't talked to Jace yet, but I'll hopefully try and get Jace and Britt on for one September episode before we dive into training camp in October. So until then, probably next week on Thursday or something. He's Chris. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.